I'm John, and
I'm Annie.
this is Annie. So we're two parts of Asia Forum moderating. Each day we'll have two moderators and an esteemed panel of artists and others who will be speaking with us. So we're very fortunate today to have 4 contributors to Lahore Biennale, 03, LB03. In order from my left is Elyas Alavi, Feroza Hakeem, Tariq Alexander Qaiser, Kiran Khan, Mizar Zulfikar, and Amra Khan, sorry. And they'll talk, we'll get to their projects in a little bit, but actually Annie, in the spirit of this panel or roundtable, which is thinking about communities, thought it would be good to begin with a collective community building exercise. So,
Hello, everyone. Yeah, it's been such an honor and pleasure to be here in Lahore. I want to thank John and Iftikhar and the whole team for their generous invitation and taking care of us this whole week. And I think this is what, day 3 or officially day 1, but day 3 of all the activities. And I think, you know, it's been so full and so rich in many ways, from head body to the belly. We've been eating, seeing like incredible different aspects of Lahore and the works and so on. But I think that in some ways, you know, just to be embodied in our approach, like I think some of us are also tired. You know, we've all flown in from different parts of the world. We're of different ages. You know, I count myself as like someone who's probably feeling it. So I think maybe let's start in a way where we center the body again, right? Because the body has so much knowledge. The body is how we relate. And I'm sure we'll come to that in your work as well, thinking about communities. So I'd like to invite everyone to just have a little grounding meditation exercise together first, right? To reground ourselves. And I want to take inspiration from that wonderful work that we saw at the fort. How to be like a rock? How to become a rock? Yeah. So I'm going to read a little bit and then also go a little bit off script. So if I just invite everyone to close your eyes. Right. And pay attention to the peripheries of your body. And take a deep breath if you feel like it. Whew. And you're welcome to make sounds if you want when you breathe or not. It's up to you. There's no right, no wrong. And in doing so, you can also start to think about your skin and how it holds the breath and holds you. And when you're doing your breathing, you can also notice how effortless it is. Your body knows when to breathe in and when to breathe out. And the body knows when you need a moment as well. And so we also draw inspiration from the inflatable that we just visited, that's gently moving, a membrane that's gently shifting as it needs to. So as you're breathing, your internal eye can start to scan. Where are your moments of stillness? What's going on inside, from the head, down your forehead, behind your eyes, your earlobes, your face, the amount of work we've used with our face to make smiles, to make language, our lips, the labor that's used to greet each other, to form our thoughts. And as you start to breathe, also allow yourself to breathe a little deeper. So the breath goes into your chest, into your tummy. You don't have to hold anything in. You can just let it go for a moment. You don't have to be an arts professional. You don't have to be an artist right now or an academic. You can be all that you know yourself to be. or even a moment where someday you might be a rock too. And this moment is really precious. This moment is a fraction of the second of the geological epoch. Just a moment in a long time. And this is also a moment that you can allow yourself to picture all that you do not know. It can be a moment where we don't have to be always productive. And as you scan down from your tummy to your hips, to your thighs, where are the areas that you feel some tension? You can also start to breathe into those spaces, because we hold so much in the body. Different tensions, different expectations, different disappointments and grief. You can let some of that go. And also think, what is also beyond the body? Things that are beyond the limits of our skin. And that's also okay to let that go. And so you start to feel the weight of the body in just letting go, down the knees, your calves, your feet. That you, your body, your dreams and desires, your burdens and your greed, and what has been inflicted and lies within you and around you. And even though we are a body in the now, you're also a body that's connected to different pasts and your possible futures. So take a deep breath, let it go. Take a deep breath for all the stories that you have been and all the stories that you are yet to be. And let's take 3 big breaths together so that we are collectively breathing and we know each other to be breathing alongside each other. So I'll count to 4 for an inhale and then 4 for an exhale. So we'll do this 3 times. Yeah? And now we go 1, 2, 3, 4. We hold 1 moment. 4, 3, 2, 1. Fully exhale. Again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just hold it at the top and exhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. Last one. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 4, 3, 2, 1. And now let's open our eyes. Welcome back. And you see each other. And just for a moment before we start, I'd like you to turn to someone that you're nearby. And I'm going to ask a question that's very non-academic. And I'll ask you to ask a question that's non-academic of each other. How are you resourcing yourself this week? What keeps you going? What sustains you? And maybe that's also a question that or maybe the answer is also something that keeps you going throughout your practice as well. So if you could just turn to each other and have that conversation.
Okay, so I don't know. I feel like this is nice. I just hardly let it go on, but maybe we should. Okay, yeah, we should. Okay, so I'm going to recall us all to the room from our conversations and into a different conversation that we can begin having. Thank you so much, Annie. That was a really lovely way to begin this conversation and the roundtable with everyone. And I think it shows that there's different ways of building communities and being a community together. And I think that that's part of what we're here to explore in the panel today, or the roundtable today. And maybe as a way to begin, I thought it would be good, because I'm not sure everyone is familiar with the works in the Biennale. So I thought maybe you could just start by asking the different contributors and participants to talk about the work that is on view. And so maybe I can begin by asking Elyas, you and Feroza to talk about the Sound of Silence project, and how it began as a project in some ways out of a double alienation in some ways, right? It's your own alienation on arriving in Australia and feeling like there was a certain disconnect between you and the place, but then also discovering the alienation that was experienced by the cameleers, who were recruited from South Asia and West Asia to help colonize and the outback. And in some ways that created a community between you and the descendants of these cameleers. So I was wondering if you could talk about that, but also about the community that you found when you continued the project here in Pakistan. So
beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm also really grateful to be here, and thank you, Annie. That was really beautiful. Like we forget so much that we need to give time to our bodies, and that was really beautiful. You summarized it very well. So in short, when I went to Australia, so Australia is like literally so far away that you feel like the first 2-3 years I've even felt like this. Even the sky is quite low, and the streets are so quiet and no one's around. But then you feel that you feel like that foreigner. And then after many years, I realized that there are connections. There are people from the same region who walked on that land many years ago. So the history goes back to 170 years. We have some images, and Asma can show further as well, the next one. Because there are lots of images, so feel free to show them randomly. So then I started getting to know some of the descendants who are in art, and one of them in Adelaide, which I lived for a long time. This beautiful lady, Nikki Compston, she told me how she has connection to today's Afghanistan, but she just know the names. She doesn't know where exactly her great-grandfathers come from. And for me, it was like such a joy, and also finding roots there. You feel like this foreign land has connection to you. So that was the start of the research. But about 3 years ago, I started making works about it and traveling around. For this series that we seeing at Lahore Fort, it started with this work which was shown at the Sydney Biennale, and John came and saw this. We can go to next one, and feel free to go further. So then the inspiration behind all of this work was when I saw a old robab in a mosque built by the cameleers in 1887 at the very far east of New South Wales. There's this beautiful place called Broken Hill, and then there is a mosque which is about maybe 5 meters, 5 to 4 meters, and this is the mosque. And then you see down there, there is a robab instrument. It's very broken. We can go to the next one. So this is that robab, and for me this is like a witness that cameleers were not only these skilled men who know how to work with camels, but they were musicians, they were writers, there are books left, there are notebooks left, and sadly no one really talked about it. No one really recorded their voice or the music they played. No one really have any of the songs and poetry they did. So I met some of the descendants. he's the one who look after this mosque, now turned it to a small museum. And then he has this beautiful collection of old photographs from his family and others. And there, after some research, if you go back to the other image, yeah, this one, after a year research, I finally could find out who that musician was, who this Robab belonged to. So on that image, we see the man who's sitting. He's the one, his name is Qaiser. More likely his first name changed, so but his last name is Shirdel. And this is his son, 85 years old. So Kai passed away 70 years ago. And then we see on the other image, we see that young boy is John Shirdel, which is the son of the musician. And on the top is his house, which he proudly painted a camel on at the gate of the house. We go further. We go to next one. So this is the house that he was born, and sadly now it says it's for sale. That shows how that rich history totally ignored. So almost like majority of Australian population, they never heard about the cameleers or about this history. So I did some more research of what other musical instruments brought by cameleers. So here we see the drum, and then we see the small harmonica as well, harmonica. And then on the other one, that's a very famous image. We see a camel carrying a big piano, and piano is obviously not from our region, but that picture is more famous, and to me is like how more likely that piano were taken to a governor or a politician. But so that's known, but not the other images. So this is the only image left of them playing music. So this is another image which I found is one of the descendants who kept this musical instrument. Sadly, all of those musical instruments they lost or destroyed because no one really no one was like really kept them. So this is one of the descendants who himself playing music. We can go further, and every year there's an annual gathering of all the descendants coming to the north of South Australia called Murray, and they proudly do a camel race and also lots of activity for kids. And then we had the image of the graveyard, which on the graveyard image you see there are 3 languages on that gravestone. So there is Arabic, and there is Farsi, and there is English, which that's really fascinating. And so the person died in 1895. We go to next one. There's gathering like this, and the descendants, as soon as like realizing you're from that background, me from Afghanistan, they really welcome you. They want to find more information about their grandfather's origin. And then I came to Pakistan thanks to John, knowing that Karachi was one of the main port that cameleers got onto the ship and went to Australia. So I wanted to see especially Karachi, where this photo is taken near the sea side in Karachi. And there I met many of the cameleers there, having beautiful conversation with them. But also I traveled to Quetta, Balochistan, which there are other images from Quetta, Balochistan, because for me as a Hazara ethnic person as well, I wanted to first time meet and connect with my other Hazara friends and community in Quetta. And there for the first time I met Feroza and also Rahim Jan, who is also here. And seeing their work, I was really fascinated, and I wanted to work with them. We can go further. So at Lahore Fort, you may have seen this series of collage work, which was a collaborative work between us. And for me, is how the cameleers welcomed me, and like I see that connection is similar to the connection I found in Pakistan and in Quetta, seeing these young friends. But I felt like the friendship is like much more deeper. And so this series of work, which the collage work are also inspired by some of the notebooks kept by the cameleers, where it's quite evident that they were trying to keep their language alive. Sadly, they couldn't, because they were not allowed to marry. They're never allowed to bring their wives or daughters with them. So that was a big no. That's why their language died with them. But for me, having, we can go to the next one, working with these words and letters, I wanted to say how the language is so important. So here we have 3 images. The paintings are done by Rahim, who's here and is beautifully painted, very skillful artist. And each of them obviously has so much story, but one of them is a well-known cameleers called Bijay Darvish Baloch, known in Australia. Another one down there is a young cameleers living currently in Quetta, Balochistan. And the other one is Rahim's grandfather, who came from Afghanistan due to the persecution of our Hazara people. So I felt this displacement and this going to another place it's happening differently. I think, yeah. So that's the last one. And each of them, you see there's similarity. There's one image from Australia and one image from Pakistan. I think I talk a lot.
Yeah, thank you, Elyas. Feroza, I was wondering if you could say a little about, what the process is like for you on the other side, because like for Elyas, it was kind of like he was kind of carrying out the wish of descendants, right, to kind of reconnect, and you were on the other end of that, but not necessarily fulfilling someone else's wish. But
his Elyas talked that he first visited the Quetta, and we met on my studio with Rahim Jan, and then we discussed the similarities between the city that he lived on Australia and I live in Quetta. So as you, maybe some of you are familiar with my work. So we will agree on the landscape of the Quetta, as maybe I'm from Balochistan, Quetta, living on that Hazara community. It's specific, the city name is Hazara. And then my work is related, my work is related more about 2 sceneries of the landscape. This I painted in miniature, trying to show the sceneries of Quetta, and we don't have much greenery on our side. And maybe more than 2 million people living in Quetta, and we don't have any playground and the park, public park. We don't have that such facilities over there. So when I came here in Lahore for my higher education, I was very fascinated with greenery and tried to search about the trees. And then I came to know that, trees have their symbolically meanings as well. For example, cedar tree represent man, and apricot trees represent female. Unfortunately, in Quetta, I have only seen 2 trees: cedar tree and apricot tree. Yeah, no other trees I haven't seen in Quetta. And we have the mountain that I paint in every painting of mine. In the middle, I show Quetta, and in the outer border, I try to show that greenery, that we don't have that greenery in our areas.
Yeah, one of the interesting things about your own work that's also visible in the collaboration is, Elyas's project in some ways is about the identity between the cameleers and the
Yes.
camels, you know, the way that the fates of the animals and the humans were intertwined to some degree. In your work, there's a kind of a way in which trees become symbols of people. And, you know, in the show that we just saw that just opened at Nemashka, you know, there's a way in which the figures of the people, like, you know,
Yes, yes.
are kind of hidden in the trees.
Yes,
So,
exactly. Basically, as Elyas talked about the displacement, many of people don't know about the Hazara and the history, the minorities that we live in the Quetta. Unfortunately, from the centuries, we are getting targeted because of religion basis or something else. So in Afghanistan also we face that. Because of unsafety conditions, we migrated from Afghanistan to Pakistan. My forefather migrated from Afghanistan to Pakistan before partition. Now we are living 3 generations here, and I am a Pakistani. So when I came here in Lahore, or maybe I visited different areas of Pakistan, they don't know about Hazara or me. The people of here in Pakistan, they ask me, "Oh, are you Korean or you are Chinese?" So
they ask me that all the time.
yeah, also exactly. So I'm trying to explain them that no, I'm Pakistani. I live in Quetta, Balochistan, and I'm Hazara speaking Persian. So they will ask me, "Oh, you are that people that giving protest on the Quetta." So suddenly they recognized by protest or by dharna that we are Hazara. This is the basic identity of ours that we represent it here. So yeah, so in my paintings, some of my paintings you can see over here, I usually used round shapes. If we see in protest or dharna, the female Hazara people are giving the whenever they face any target or maybe they face any what we can say that when they target their loved ones, they give dharna on Quetta. Dharna means protest, and they sit on the main point, for example, on bypass road, to protest and to raise their voices. So, if in far away we see that imaginary, we look that dharna or maybe their figurative part look like in a circle. So yeah, in every tree I try to represent that protest. It's like on the border we can see, and in the middle we can see the landscape of Quetta.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you,
You're welcome.
thank you, Feroza. Thank you, Elyas. I'm going to move next to Kiran. So, you know, for the project that you were involved with, which is the realization of WeMend by Womanifesto, I was really kind of struck by the way that you reimagined the project, because the project is about community and it's about using, you know, found an existing fabric to create a kind of a larger tapestry or a larger quilt, right? Patchwork for the community and as a kind of social activity. But you really kind of, you know, as the head of the TFA department, wanted to kind of reimagine it as something that was about community, but a very particular kind of community, and reaching out with Carva and Craft Foundation, for instance, and also Baziaft. And I was wondering if you could say a little about, you know, that kind of like that particular, you know, direction and vision.
Thank you, John. So initially when we had a discussion and, you know, about Womanifesto and WeMend, so I knew that the project was about mending together and, you know, sewing and, you know, embroidering together, which was therapeutic as anyways. But what I wanted more than that when the project initially came to us was that I wanted it to be very, very meaningful and not just, you know, patches of fabric coming together. So the first thing that we did was looked at where we were going to, you know, display it and how the curation would be, which was, as you said, it was the YMCA building. And so then I started, you know, my research on what, of course, we knew what it was, a lot more detail of what YMCA was and how it started. And so it was basically representative of inclusivity. So we started from there, but then, we thought that all the inclusivity that we want and all the people who would be bringing their fabrics, they must be more than just mending together. And it should be like a personal narrative of people bringing in their stories through the fabric, because fabric is anywhere in the world very contextual. And the kind of materiality, and since I was, head of the TFA department, material is something that is ingrained, in our training. And at the department, we, work very closely with craft communities. So Karwan being one of them, but many others, Kashyap Foundation as well. And it is something that, we've thrived on as a university and a department. So when we started visualizing the project, we thought that, it would be a little more meaningful than just pieces of fabric coming together. So we divided a theoretical framework of where we divided it into, where fabric was a social identity marker, and we wanted a communal fabric where we would have 3 kinds of areas. The first was personal narrative. So people will be, developing fabrics and bringing in their stories that were very personal and related, to the heart. And then we had intergenerational stories as well. So fabrics used intergenerationally. So you'll see in the project as well that people bringing in, their grandmother's dupatta or something that they had inherited. And finally, the third area was political discourse.
And these are color coded too, right?
These are color coded. So we did reds and maroons for the first one, and then beige and vintage colors for the intergenerational, and then black and white and blues for the political discourse. And initially we divided it into themes for our students, and it was open to whatever they wanted to do. And it was very interesting how, they all sort of depicted what they wanted to do. And when we came together, what was really, I don't know, mesmerizing, I think, was how the stories came together. So initially it was just students and faculty. And I remember one of my students, ex-students, graduate, because I opened it to everyone, to the entire community. And she said, ma'am, my mother is saying, you seem happier these days. What is happening? She was going through a very bad patch in her life. And the whole idea of mending together, I realized what the community was doing to each other and how we were empowering each other through those 10, 15 days that we worked on campus. Then we opened it up more. So we opened it up to Karwan artisans. And because we work very closely with lots of craft communities.
And just for those of us not familiar with Karwan, so it's a foundation that works with...
So it's an NGO that works with craft communities in central and southern Punjab. And they work to empower women artisans, and not just women artisans, but increasing their livelihoods as well. So craft being at the center of all of this. And Baz Yaft is another organization that also works with craft communities, but they work with transgender community as well. So when we did this, and they started pouring in and we started mending together, it just became very exciting. Everybody sharing their story every day. And then finally, when we came here, then we thought, okay, let's be more inclusive. And so the last workshop was, we invited about 9 schools from Lahore who had differently abled students. So some of them had, hearing disabilities. There were the blind children coming in. And, their teacher cried that day because she said, we've never been invited to such an event where our students are made to be felt, to be included in such an activity. And, the happiness on their faces, I mean, it made me emotional that day as well. So I think that, through this fabric and textile narrative, what has come together is a very powerful narrative that has, I think, strengthened us, the students, the community, and the faculty, and everybody who was visiting it as well.
Yeah, and it's also one that's, it's about weaving together a community, as it were, but weaving it out of existing fabrics and kind of reusing things.
Yeah, so it was so interesting that one of my pieces. Can we go back? So my mother's Fulkari shawl. If we can go back, I don't know if it's here. So my mother's Fulkari shawl. I had like treasured it. This one, yes. So this one that you see here on the ground. Piche karenge ek second. So this is my piece that talks about patriarchal discourse. In our part of the world. And it says, "Awaaz aista rakho, badtameez ladki," which means, rude girl, and you should, speak slowly. And that is the discourse that we encounter here, whether you're, wherever, whichever socio-economic background you belong to. So there were pieces that everybody. This was my mother's Fulkari shawl that I had kept for years and years.
Yeah.
And suddenly, everybody wanted to bring their pieces and share stories. So you have pieces that have gone down generations. In this big piece, you have dupattas and attire that their grandmothers or their paternal grandmothers or their own mothers have worn actually. And everybody wanted to bring in those pieces and donate. So many people asked me, why are you giving this? And I said, I don't know. It gives another kind of happiness, and the fact that everybody is together and sharing each other's narrative.
Yeah, it's wonderful the way that the piece has kind of extended and made public the lives of these very personal pieces, right? So thank you for that. Maybe can we? Do you have something else you'd like to share?
No,
or should
no,
we?
just that
Okay.
He was asking me if I can translate. So it says that if you keep your voice low, because if you don't, you are rude. And please keep quiet and do not answer back, otherwise go away. And so you are rude if you answer back.
Okay.
So that is something that is ingrained in this part of the world. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Kiran. So as a project that's kind of built around questions of reuse and taking things out of circulation and for the purposes of building art and building community, this also is very much true of the Museo Air Solar that Mizna, you and Amra were involved with as part of Kinnaird College, Fine Art Department. I was wondering if you could talk a little about the process of working with the group that that did amazing work in record time in putting the project together.
So clearly this, if you've seen the scale of the project, it was definitely a crowdsourced project, and we needed a lot of community to take ownership of the project for it to work. But the fact that it was a material which was very present in everybody's domestic spaces, and it was very present in a very familiar material for not just the students, the faculty, the alumni, but also the staff of the college. There was a lot of curiosity. Everybody wanted to donate. They had things that they wanted to donate, and they wanted to see what we are going to do with those things. And primarily not a fine arts institute, it's a larger institute with more subject. It was suddenly a topic where it was suddenly a space where we could intersect with everybody else as well. Like the fine arts department suddenly had a presence. And they wanted to know, we are doing something environmental, not arty, but kind of making them understand that it's both at the same time.
And here you can see basically the making of, right, where it was laid out on the campus of Kinnaird. And what was amazing seeing, because you were sending us photos as it was happening, and just seeing how people were getting drawn into the project.
So it was a very large scale. What you see right now is also not 100%. That is only 2/3 of the space that you saw. We didn't have any space. So a lot of this was built in pieces, which were then joined together. So a lot of people, once again, had to take ownership and responsibility. And there was this kind of, like Kiran said, that community came in, and we could see people coming in every day, and we could see people taking pride in, oh, I made this pattern. And oh, and this sort of this friendly competition that I got 200 bags. How many did you bring? That sort of a thing happening.
And we needed a lot of bags.
We needed a
lot of bags, yeah.
And there were also trends in the bag donations. We got a lot of dry cleaning bags. We got a lot of bread bags. I mean, we had assumed that a lot of shopping bags would come in, but it was so much more than that. And that also made us realize that shopping bags is only the tip of the iceberg. Plastic is everywhere. Our soap is wrapped in plastic. So all those little tidbits that came in, we knew plastic is a problem, but how much of a problem was also something that kind of dawned on us during the making of the product. So
Mm-hmm.
So we had bags coming in from all over the world. We had MFA Boston. We had, you could talk about class as well, because there's some really expensive looking bags, and then really bags which are from, let's say, Khalifa Mithai and all. And we'll have like high-end shops like Mother Care from here, and then we'll have mini miners, and then some other stores which are from Baby Kids Store or Bobby Shoes. We've had bags like that as well. And then what kind of images were then being made became very interesting as well. The students chose to make more drawings, but the people that came at the site wanted to write more and express more through words, and lots of hearts and lots of misuse and lots of eyes and bleeding eyes. So it was another kind of a conversation that was happening, which we enjoyed more.
So my favorite anecdote is that we had somebody from the faculty kind of messaging me in a frenzy and said, I've been saving bags and now I know why I've been saving them for. And you and she was
I'll
like,
tell my grandmother that.
Yeah. She was like, I knew they would come in handy one day. And it was like, now I can let them go. And this sort of this ownership across the community. And my favorite day was the day the community came, sprawled out in the sort of lawns and drew. Because even that was like there was somebody playing a guitar, somebody just talking. One before as well.
So this was the drawing day. And the day after, this was everyone just coming and drawing, because there was a part that was assigned to them to draw on, and then when you fold it, the lower part was for the audience to come and draw. Yeah. So when you go to the next one, this was the day we folded it. And then inflated her, and then she started to walk away.
And then we got the venue.
The site was really something. It didn't have a ceiling the day we went there. And we asked the guy, will this place it'll be ready by the 1st of October? And he's like, Baji, ye nahi tayar hogi. 2025 like this will not be ready till October 1st, 2025 even. So
that's not what they told us a few months ago. Huh?
At least he put a ceiling up for us.
And another example of the community was that it rained and there was a storm, and the people on site who had nothing to do with the project knew they had to protect it. So it was sort of like this ownership that we keep talking about, that this is important. And the people that we get, I mean, we get a lot of community from around Bradlaugh, a lot of children. There's instant recognition that, ooh, we know, we have this plastic bag, and oh, this is what you're doing. And it's interesting how
bringing their friends in.
Yeah.
They would come and visit, and next day they'll bring kids in uniform and would have a whole group with them. Yeah. And it's like this every day. Someone goes, sees it, comes back, comes and brings another friend. And what was interesting was that even the workers that were working there, they participated in helping out. Because we were stripping paint off a door, they provided us with tools like, why don't you use this? It'll be faster. So we'd use their, they help clean, they help sort, they've helped resolve a lot of things. And they're just everyday carpenters, you know. He'd light a smoke and he'd just walk towards it and go like, why don't I just go on inside like this? Like, not with your cigarette. Otherwise, it's all good.
And the ethos of sort of reusing is everywhere. I mean, the mats that we have used, the door is reused. Yeah. Most of the plastic in there, almost all of it is sort of, so just really looking at things and kind of thinking of how we can upcycle it and how we can kind of salvage it to make something.
And how art can be a process of kind of reusing things. But I also like the what I'm hearing from both of you and from Kiran is this kind of leitmotif about ownership. Because it seems like part of the building the community that's happening isn't just like, okay, we're all working together. It's that everyone is responsible for some part of it, and they really feel like that's what, you know, that's when they really invest in it, right? And that's kind of interesting, I think. Also, I think because that's one of the issues thinking about environment is that, you know, we're having problems in terms of thinking of ownership and whose problem is it and whose actually problem is it to deal with, right? And And so this is an interesting point, I think, that you're raising. Yeah.
And what was one more thing that was really interesting was everyone felt comfortable writing whatever they wanted. So we have a lot of political statements. We have a lot of statements about women's rights. We have statements about Palestine. We have statements about the army. We have
lots of greed statements.
Lots of football. We had
and lots of greed statements.
Yeah. And so I think people should go back to the space and actually read up on everything. We were thinking we have been documenting a lot of them. We enjoyed the football one more because the kids had written about how Ronaldo is the best and some other guys
yes,
came,
there's like a battle.
Just erased it. No, it's messy.
But yeah, I was just gonna say that, you know, just been beautiful just listening to like the different projects and also clearly the energy that was created through working with community. And I think that also goes some way to explaining perhaps the rise of socially engaged practice as a way to generate ownership and participation. And I love this idea of mending together, like what possibilities are there when we work together, right? But I almost want to really kind of turn that question around because I think the benefits of doing this are clear, right? Yeah. But turning it around, because I know that we're still looking at, you know, ideas of who the artist is, right? Where authorship is and so on. And in some sense, everyone here is contributing to a project initiated by a particular artist, right? And that energy is what's created the beauty of this project. But what kind, I suppose I would love to hear from you, like while working with such a diversity of people and with different needs, including those with different disabilities, what kind of processes or policies or practices of care did you enact in this process? Because it must have been a lengthy process to do all that work in dealing with sensitive memories and needs and so on. How did that guide you in your work?
Well, for one thing, I think with the differently abled community, for a moment I felt very guilty that I'm not doing enough or I haven't done enough. So I think through the project, it was like a realization as well that you know, we don't realize the kind of privileges that we have or are in, and when you interact with the community and the kind of happiness that was on their faces, it just gave me a different kind of energy to continue doing this. And you know, I sat back and I reflected, you know, because I talked to the teacher and I said, we should have more workshops like this and maybe you can bring the students to BNU. And you know, she was just so excited. And we've never done this at BNU actually. We have worked with craft communities, but never with maybe the differently abled community. So I think through the project, it was also an eye-opener for us and for them as well, because they realized that they can do something that sort of bonds us together. And it was the first time that different communities were bonding together at, you know, on a platform which was just so meaningful. And so I think, yeah, it is something that in terms of even, you know, policy, even at BNU, it will be something that I will definitely be pushing, you know, for future endeavors.
I mean, that's great to hear because I think there's a lot to be said about also thinking about access, right? Who can have access to join these projects? How do we make this more invitational in a way, right? So, because sometimes with socially engaged practices, especially when we draw on energies or draw on memories, there is a consideration also how these become harnessed for a project, right? And so what is the return to the community, right? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that too.
Should we, yeah. So yeah, and actually on it as an extension of that, Tariq, I mean, you know, going back to this question of ownership, I think one of the things that, yeah, thanks. One of the questions that I'm, you know, I think you're well known as someone who's done a lot of work in terms of, you know, advocating for the mangroves on Bundal Island and in Karachi. But I think part of what's interesting about the work that you're doing is not just, you know, the films that you've made that have circulated via social media and, you know, like on WhatsApp and so on and so forth, and also other channels, but also the way that, you know, when we met in the summer and you were talking about the process where you're occupying a very particular position where, you know, you want to kind of, you know, save these islands, but at the same time, you don't want to alienate the people who actually don't want to save the islands. And so in some ways, you know, like, you want them to take ownership to some degree of that, right? And to be part of the community of people who are trying to also kind of like preserve some part of the mangroves. And I was wondering if you could talk about that particular position that you occupy.
Okay, is this working? Yes, absolutely. John, the Lahore Biennale, thank you so much. I am an accidental artist. It's in my heart. I wanted to be a marine biologist when I was young, and I became an architect. And the reason for it was survival. My father explained in no uncertain terms, pick something you like, but pick something that will allow you to earn a living, that will allow you to do what you like to do. Then he got really worried when I started doing what I really wanted to do. But before he passed, he called me and I said, "Beta, come here, sit down." He was bedridden. And God bless his soul, he was my best friend and my mentor and my teacher. And he said, "Beta," I'll say it in Urdu and then I'll translate it into English. "Beta, ये तुमने सारा समंदर का काम जो किया है और ये तुमने सारा किश्तियों पे वक्त गुजारा है और पैसा लगाया है, मैं तुम्हें बस एक चीज़ कहना चाहता हूँ." And my heart sank. Because what he said was, "Son, all this effort that you have put into the ocean and into your boats and the money you have spent that you have earned, I just want to tell you something." Now, he was very close to passing, and if he had told me, "Do not go on the ocean, sell your boats," I would have done it. He was a singular man who I would not disobey. And he said, "Beta, बस तुम्हें ये कहना चाहता हूँ कि तुम्हारे लिए तुमने जो जिंदगी गुजारी है, तुमने सही किया है." He basically said, he says, for you, for the kind of person that you are and for what your passions are and what you want to do, this life that you have chosen and these boats that you have spent your money on, you have done the right thing. I just wanted to tell you that. He passed away less than a year after that. So I thank him for this. I have spent my life refusing to work dispassionately. I work very passionately, and rightfully or wrongfully, you know, that doesn't matter. What matters is that one follows one's beliefs. I love the natural world. I empathize with trees. I talk to trees, whatever that means, but they do talk back. They're hidden conversations that we all feel. And I think that resonates with so many of the artists out here and the art historians and the curators. And that's why we do this, because you see these hidden messages, hidden words, and that's why we write poetry. I write a lot. I write poetry. My work is driven by words. My work is driven by poetry. And when you write poetry, you grab the hidden meanings and you bring them out. And vocabulary is just a tool to express what you need to do. And for me, my art is our words, the vocabulary. However, that's not enough to communicate. So I learned to make films. I've been handling a camera since the age of 7, but I learned to make films during COVID because these messages were very important. And John, yes, working with constraints does not mean compromise. It does not mean that you are taking the easy road. It's the harder road. My tendency is to chain myself to a fence and burn my trees. My German side tells me to keep the fire extinguisher really close. Okay, but the fire extinguisher is very necessary. And the thing is, if I want to achieve anything, I need to ensure that I can do it with the people who actually can facilitate this. And you don't alienate them, you work with them, you create circumstances where hopefully it's embarrassing to them. Unfortunately, skins are very thick, but persistence has great value. And so during COVID, I started making movies, and I've been photographing these channels for 15 years. I can't take care of the whole delta, but I certainly can take care of a section that I have access to. And that's about a 14-15 kilometer stretch of islands, about 3 to 5 islands, depending on what you'll qualify as the size as. The main one is Bundle Island. Bundle Island was one of the main staging posts for your cameleers to take the camels away. Okay, so it's been used as a camel. It's an uninhabited island, and it's got a very deep history. So I've been exploring this. I've been reading about the history. I've been writing about it. I have been making movies and submitting them on social media to about 2,000 people almost every Sunday for the last 6 years. They aren't meant to go into the mass media. They were meant to go to targeted people. So the bureaucracy got them, the administration got them, the prime ministers got them. Imran Khan was getting them through Asad Omar, who was getting them through his mother-in-law, who is my friend. So that was the strategy. You had to, the corps commander would get it, the chief minister would get it from 3 friends. I can't name them, I don't want to name them. The chief minister is very respectful, is very kind to me still. I have open doors. What is a lot done for these islands? No. Do I get a lot of respect and acknowledgement? Yes.
Actually, that's a really good note to dive in, because I think we just had a note that we're very close to time. Yeah. And I'm just thinking also of how you navigate those questions of authorship, of regard and prestige that come into play,
yeah.
right?
What I'd like to do,
projects. But then how does one then think about communities? And for you, I think very especially, especially the non-human human relations, right?
Very important. What I'd like to do is I just show a small clip. John had asked me to show some visuals of the area that I'm working on and things. I chose something that I have not made. One of the major successes, perhaps, that I have had is that the Time magazine picked up the story and sent a journalist and Matthew Pelly, the photographer, to photograph the story. It opened doors. It opened a huge amount of doors. So I'd like to show this to you quickly. It's encompassing. It's not terribly long. Please.
I guess, yeah, I know that we're running out of time. There's so much we would love to ask, because I think one thing that I really wanted to acknowledge as well is that working in the way that you do with communities, with large group of communities, diverse needs, but also non-human communities, and you have how to say something that's really important and critical that you're trying to also advocate for, right? Like, and all this work can be very tiring and exhausting, and there's conflict as well when you work with people and you work with these systems. I guess the question is, you know, is it a question, is a comment, like, how do we continually also reflect on better ways to share that agency, right? Because as people who initiate the projects, as people who take on that responsibility at work, you know, how also do we make space to have others lead, for example, and other people make it possible to share that agency and responsibility?
Yeah, I think this is a really good point, Annie, because I mean, in the case of the Museo Solar and also WeMend, the projects themselves are somewhat open source, right? Tomas Saraceno kind of designed it, and it's online. Anyone can download the PDF. WeMend is a project which is can be realized without Womanifesto being present, and it can take different forms and different shapes as we've seen. So part of, I think, what we're thinking about is talking about is these projects that end up belonging to people, but also don't belong to anyone, right? And so I think that's kind of an interesting model for thinking about agency and what's needed in terms of both maybe public art, community art, but also in terms of thinking about environment. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So
you so much for
maybe
sharing.
we'll wrap up there. Okay.